So, thanks for that introduction, man. So, I imagine we're here because we all have a sense, or we all have a feeling, or we all care about this significant and rapid transformation that's going on around us. And it's not just in our culture, it's not just in our politics, it's not just in our media, but it's in our churches as well. And that's really what, like, how my whole journey with this has started, is just this gripping with the reality that 4 out of 5 Americans are not connecting in church. I mean, I know it doesn't always seem like that, and when I tell people that, it just is like, what? You know, depending on where you're from, everybody goes to church, everybody's a Christian, but the reality is that for every one person connecting in the body of Christ and connecting with the love of Jesus, there are 4 people out there who aren't. And these are people who are lost. These are people who matter to God. And that bothers me. Like, I hope that bothers you too, because we can't just be like, oh yeah, that's a thing. Oh yeah, no big deal. No, wait, man, hold on a second. That bothers me. But if I'm being honest, for me, like, I couldn't be bothered to worry about that because my life was too good. Things were going well for me, and I didn't want to worry about that. I didn't want to deal with that. See, there's a picture I'll put up there of my family. That's my wife, Sarah, and our 2 daughters, Juliana, who's 5, and Winter, who's 2. My wife and I are both from Nashville. We met each other there. I was a rock star in a rock band, which really I just played the drums. But she drove a pickup truck, so the drums went with her, so I went with her too, and naturally she fell in love with me because I'm irresistible. But no, seriously, she's amazing. But you know, we dated in high school, and we both went to Milligan, had a great experience at Milligan. We're still paying for that great experience at Milligan. I'm waiting for them to put my name up on one of those buildings that I bought. But it's a great school, guys. But no, we had a great experience at Milligan. I volunteered at Crossroads out in Gray. I did an internship at Grandview. It was great. It was awesome. I mean, we graduated and went on to do what I imagine most Milligan grads want to do. My wife had a degree in business management. She went on to have a career and build momentum and do well. I had a degree in Bible ministry, and we were able to do ministry in churches for 14 years. And it was going well. It was going great. We were in Nashville for a few years. We went to Lexington, to a church outside there, and it was interesting. It was a church of like 500 people, but there's still no youth group, and we were doing youth ministry. So we came in and we're like, hey, just start it from scratch and build teams from scratch. And we're like, okay. We went to Cincinnati to a great church, River Hills up in Cincinnati, which was like 1,000 people. But interestingly, there was still no youth group. And they said the same thing to us: start the youth group, build the team up from scratch. And we said, okay, and we did that. And it went well. Everything was going well. And it was in Cincinnati that we were ready to stay. We were like, you know, we had been doing this for several years. We had found the place. We'd moved all over. We wanted to lay down roots. Our daughters were born. We bought our first house. We were really building friendships and relationships. The ministry was going well. But we've always had a heart for, I mean, like our entire ministry experience, we've always had a special softness in our heart for people taking their very first steps in faith. And it just really got to bother us that we are surrounded by lost people. And that there are so many lost people out there. And we're like, what do we do with that? I mean, there's so many great churches doing great things, and what we wanted to do with that was let's get involved with an established church that has stability and has momentum and has resources and has all these things, and get involved with that. But honestly, we just took a year, and we're like, we're going to talk about this, we're going to pray about this, we're going to fast. We didn't fast the entire year, we fasted throughout that year, but we're just to seek God's guidance in what that meant for us. And it's interesting, there's a lot of interesting things that happened to us during that year. One of the things is the church I was at asked me if I wanted to go to a conference in Orlando. And as soon as they said Orlando, I was like, yep, I'll go. I don't know what it is, but I'll go to Orlando. And it turned out to be Exponential, a church planting conference. I think probably all of you guys are aware of that. So 2 things happened to me at this conference. One, I ran into an old college buddy of mine, Andy McNeely. And if you've ever met Andy, you know that he will not shut up about church planting. Like, it's just like, he's like it's his thing, right? And I mean, just being around him and like hearing his story and hearing like his journey of how God was guiding him. The other thing that happened to me was that I found out that the single most effective way of reaching lost people is by starting new churches. And what am I supposed to do with that, right? When my wife and I are like, man, we just have a special heart for lost people in particular. And the single most effective way of reaching lost people is by starting new churches. And we really wrestled with that. Like the calling was there, but we wrestled with that because we didn't want to do that. Like we just didn't want to. And you're stepping into the unknown. You're doing things that aren't being done to reach people who aren't being reached. We didn't want to do that. We wanted to do what we knew how to do. We were good at what we did, at what we knew how to do. Right? Stepping into a risk and the unknown. It's like we have stability. This is fantastic. We don't want to do that. So we wrestled with that for the longest time. So we ended up going up to visit Andy. He invited us up, and we said, let's go, and we'll meet with a couple of church planters up there and spend some time talking to them and hearing what it's really like. Not just this big idea of like the grand like idea of church planting, but really what is it like? Because we had no idea. We're like, what really is it like down there for you guys? And we were hoping that once you learn what it's really like, we can close the door on this, because we have this like itch in our brain that we can't get rid of. We don't want to close the door and have peace about that. So we met with these church planters, and it was just worse. I mean, like you're hearing like what it's really like and all that's going on. We did that. So I called a friend of mine who was my best friend's like my entire life, knows me better than my own mom, and I said, look, man, I'm really wrestling with this. Go with me to this conference. Help me, like, sit with me as we talk to these church planters. Help me think through this. Help me pray through this, so that I can close the door on this and have some peace about that and do what I really need to be doing. And he spent the entire conference going, I don't know, Brandon, it sounds just like you. Like, I was like, dang it, man, you're supposed to talk me out of this. And so the calling was there, but we wrestled with that. And we, during that year, we thought about how everywhere we've gone in ministry, we've been starting new things and building teams from the ground up. We've been doing church planting before we knew what church planting was. We thought about how we really feel called, particularly to lost people. We thought about how we have such an extensive network in Nashville of friends and family and people we've done ministry with, that if we showed up to Nashville and put out a call to do something, people would answer that call. But we really wrestled with that. So we ended up contacting Stadia because we thought, you know what? And we told them this from the get-go. We're like, look, we're wrestling with this, and we think you guys can help us have some clarity on whether or not what this is for us. We're really hoping that, these people who know what they're talking about, they can tell us we're not cut out for this, and finally we can have some peace for this. And so we went through that whole assessment process with them, and I mean, for those of you who don't know about that whole assessment process, like this thorough, invasive, uncomfortable process of wanting to know every detail about you and your life and your background and your history and filling out all these mountains of paperwork and questionnaires and interviewing with people and all these things and going and doing assessment and doing all of these, being interviewed like in such an intense situation and running through exercises and being judged on clipboards and all of that stuff. But I mean, it got to the point to where at the end of all this huge process for us, which the whole time we were saying, hey man, we don't know. We're just wrestling with this thing. We're trying to be honest with the process, which of course the calling was there, but we were resisting. And finally, at the end of that, like when we were sitting with Debbie Jones and Brent Falk, and they're saying things like, you are the exact kind of people we're looking for. You're some of the high caliber people that come through assessment. If you don't start a church, we're going to come after you. I mean, things like this are being said to us. I mean, it was the most affirming experience that I could imagine. I mean, at this point, that calling had been affirmed in so many different ways that we got to this point where look, man, we just can't not do this. So at the beginning of this year, we both quit our jobs and sold our house and uprooted our family and moved to Nashville to begin laying the groundwork for a new church. Now, when I tell people I'm starting a church in Nashville, and that's Nashville with an N, by the way, not like Asheville. I know, a lot of people have asked me that. Nashville, in Middle Tennessee. When I tell people I'm starting a church in Nashville, most people are like, what? Like, Nashville, there's so many churches in Nashville. It's the buckle of the Bible Belt. But it's not anymore. See, recently Nashville's become one of the fastest growing cities in America. It's over the past 4 years, it's grown by 11% every single year. Like when you account for deaths, when you account for people moving out of Nashville, which there are a lot of people moving out of Nashville to the surrounding counties, but even counting for that, it's growing by 100 people every single day for the past 5 years. And it's expected to continue to grow like that for the next 20 years. I mean, when you do that math, that's hundreds of thousands of people. I mean, it's absolutely insane, the transformation. I mean, it's being flooded right now. It's growing so fast, they can't build houses fast enough to contain all the people. The housing market last year was the hottest housing market in the United States. I mean, the housing prices are shooting up. And all of the people who are from Nashville, who grew up in Nashville, can no longer afford to live in Nashville. And so are all moving out to the outer surrounding counties. Like I bet if you know someone who lives in Nashville, I bet they live in Franklin, because it's like a running joke with me and my wife, because they're like, oh yeah, I know someone. Well, they live in Franklin because it's too expensive to live in Nashville. Only people moving there are living in Nashville. And so what we would think of as people who are like Southern conservative Bible-believing Christians are all fleeing to the surrounding counties. And in the city itself is being flooded with people from somewhere else. I mean, it's so crazy that next week we're voting on a $5.5 billion transit plan to build light rail all throughout the city. They're going to do like the MARTA like they have in Atlanta, because it's grown so fast the roads can't handle the capacity. I mean, it's absolutely astounding what's going on. And the people who are moving there are mostly unchurched people. Like the top two places where people are moving from is Los Angeles and Chicago. And right now, Nashville's growing faster than Chicago, by the way. There are more cranes in Nashville building skyscrapers, more in Nashville today than in New York City. And people are coming from Los Angeles, they're coming from Chicago, they're coming from Seattle, they're coming from DC, they're coming from New York. Nashville's become known as the Seattle of the South. It's become known as a New York alternative. And people are flooding there. They're coming from places that are traditionally unchurched. And so they have no church background. They have no understanding of Jesus. And not only that, but they're coming there for jobs, right? Because everyone's building their like Fortune 500 headquarters in Nashville. That's why they're coming there, because the job market's so hot. And they're coming for jobs, and they're leaving friends and family behind. So most of the people coming there don't have anybody. And you show up and you get your job, you get your apartment, and what now? We're disconnected. You know, it's funny, like Andy McNeely, when I was talking to him about this, you know, he was trying to get me, he was like, oh, you got to plant a church. You got to go to Baltimore. That's how he says it, right? Because he's a Yankee. He's like, you got to go to Baltimore. Move to Baltimore. That's where all the non-Christians are. And I told him, I was like, Andy, Nashville is currently importing all of your sinners. Like, I don't have to go there. They're coming to me. You know, like, that's what's happening, right? Like, I had a friend of mine, Jonathan, he's a super fit, super athletic guy, joined a volleyball league just because that's what he does. And he was surprised to find out two things about the people on this league. One, he was the only person in the entire league actually from Nashville. Everyone else was from somewhere else. And two, they were all terrible at volleyball. He found out that they had joined this league not because they care about volleyball, but because they had nobody. They just wanted to be around people. They just wanted to build relationships. So not only that, but by far, most of the people here, let's see if I got what's the next slide there? Yeah. So by far, most of the people moving there are millennials. So Forbes magazine said Nashville's the #1 city in America for millennials, right? And I know that's like the hot button word there. But, you know, people think, you know, millennials are the ones eating Tide Pods and like going to high school right now, but that's not millennials. Like the youngest millennials are like 20 something. Like you're talking about people born in the 80s and 90s, thereabout. So we're talking about an age range of about 20 years old to like mid 30s-ish. And I know a lot of people say a lot of things about millennials. I get it. But keep in mind, I'm 34, so that makes me one of the older millennials. So watch what you say, first of all. But there are a couple of things I want you to know about this group. First of all, this is the largest generation in American history, okay? This is the largest generation in American history. Right now, the largest group in our workforce is millennials. They're larger than any other generation in our workforce. At our next presidential election, the largest voting bloc will be millennials. I don't know how that makes you feel, but that's the situation we're looking at. Not only that, but among millennials, you're talking about 1 out of every 5 suffer from depression. That is 4 times the national average. When they did surveys among millennials and they asked how many close friends do you have? The most common answer was 0. This is unheard of. We've never seen a generation like this in American history. And I know we're all aware of the technological change, right? But let's please not gloss over how transformative this is. This generation that has grown up with the internet and cell phone connectivity and social media and all that stuff, when we're seeing like articles coming out from scientists saying like this is literally rewiring people's brains. Personally, I think this is the largest shift in communication in 500 years since the invention of the printing press. I personally believe that. I mean, I don't think we can overstate how significant that change is. This is the new Nashville. This is Nashville. It has become a mission field right here in Tennessee. And we have a tremendous opportunity at this moment in history, at this time in the history of this city, to reach people who aren't being reached. And so that's why we started the Nashville Project. It's a plan to start a new kind of church for people wanting real human connection and purpose beyond the day-to-day. And we focus on those two things because I think no matter who you are, we all want those things. And I think the church is uniquely qualified to help people find those things because ultimately we know that that's found in Jesus. And so we started partnering. We're trying to bring people together to say, hey, let's do this thing. My wife and I just moved down there, so we're partnering with Stadia. We have a partner church in Nashville, Lakeshore Christian Church, out in the far reaches of one of the suburbs. Fantastic church. River Hills and Community up in Cincinnati, where we lived for a while. Great churches. We're trying to bring people together, trying to create this thing. Because the reality is we can't do this alone, right? Like nowhere in the Bible have you seen like God's called someone to go do something and they go out and do this. They go out and do it by themselves. Like we have to bring people in on this and help us do this. And another thing that we can't do is we can't do cool events and attract people. Like that was one of the first things we became aware of. It's like we have this heart for lost people, so how do we reach them? Well, we know one way that we can't reach them is by doing cool events and like connecting people. Because I know, and like we've done that in our ministry before, where it's like we can create an event that really draws people, really attracts people, do some really great stuff, but that doesn't work in Nashville because there's already so many cool events happening. Like that's one of the reasons why Nashville is such a great place to live, is because there's something cool happening every single day on every single street corner. But what these cool events don't have is real human connection. Lots of creativity, lots of people, lots of activity and busyness, but a real lack of real human connection. So our approach is really focused on relational ministry. Right now, like we're not looking to launch until fall of next year, and we just got on the ground there now. We're giving ourselves plenty of time to build relationships. Later this year, we're going to start doing neighborhood dinners. We want to actually get in our neighborhoods. We have 2 other couples right now already. We're looking at bringing on some more couples who will be doing this. So you're looking at 3 neighborhoods right now of saying, hey, we're here. Let's get our neighbors together. Let's get people in our backyard at the cookout. Like I want 50 people at this house and 50 people at that house, and just getting people together. Say we're not going to preach a sermon. We're not doing church service or anything like that. But we actually want to take the time to build relationships with people and have a name tag and eat a hamburger and shake hands and have our kids do play dates and things like that. And so we've given ourselves enough time to do this where we can actually lay a relational foundation upon which later we will share the gospel. And so next year we're looking at starting groups, which are similar to our big neighborhood things, but on a smaller scale. And we start kind of progress a little bit. So instead of 50 people in our backyard, we want to have 15 people around our dining room table. And we're very particular about how we do groups. And I know sometimes when I talk to people, it sounds kind of arbitrary. But we are very serious about saying we have to meet in a house, we have to eat food together, and we have to talk about life. There's supposed to be some relational discussion questions. It can't just be meeting in a circle of chairs and studying the Bible. That is great, but lost people don't care about that. We want to actually get to know them as people first and eat together and build those relationships and start to share life. And what's your favorite vacation that you ever had in your life? And what was the funniest thing that ever happened to you in high school? And things like that, so that we can progress to gospel conversations. And so then in fall of next year, we're looking at just pulling all that together, saying, hey, we have these groups meeting in people's homes. We have these cookouts going in backyards. We have anybody who's talked to anybody and pulling together and say, hey, we're going to start meeting on Sunday mornings as a church and doing worship and doing church. So what are we doing right now? Put up that slide of what we're doing right now. Right now, we just got in Nashville. We're just sharing our vision. We're just planting those seeds. We're just getting started. Like, we're meeting in places like this, here in Nashville, all over the place. We're meeting with pastors. We're meeting with church people. We're looking at just bringing together like-minded people who want to kind of go with us and do with us. And the response we're getting is there are a lot of people who are just on the same wavelength with us in Nashville. We're eating a lot of meals. We're meeting with city leaders. We're doing demographic studies. We're getting to know the city. Where are the people? Where's the change? Where's the need? Things like that. We're building a network of pastors in Nashville, which it's interesting, but that doesn't exist. Like, this type of thing right here, this doesn't exist in Nashville. People are doing their own thing, and they've been doing their own thing for 200 years. And so for the first time, we're saying, hey, what happens if we get together and combine efforts and share ideas and support my church plant, hopefully. And I'm also doing a residency with one of our partner churches there called Lakeshore Christian Church. This is a time where I'm just doing leadership training and practicing. They just launched their first multi-site campus, which I was involved in that at River Hills in Cincinnati. And I came to their pastor and I said, hey, you're starting this multi-site campus, and you're going to be starting new things and starting new groups and starting new follow-ups and all this stuff. There's a lot of similarity to what I'm going to be doing. Can I come alongside you and just practice and help? And Randy at Lakeshore is phenomenal. He's like, yeah, come on out here. Come do this. But the most important thing we're doing right now is just building relationships. And just taking that time to sit down with people and build relationships. Show this picture. This is Mike and Ashley. Mike is the guy who was supposed to talk me out of church planting but didn't. These guys are Nashville natives. They've lived in Nashville their whole lives. They're somewhat of an endangered species now, but they're believers, and they've seen the change that's happening in the city. When me and my wife moved away to go do ministry and do all this, they've been there, and they've seen what's happened, and they've seen the need, and they were hungry for it. At the same time, God was planting that seeds in our minds, and they have been super excited to be a part of our team. They are all in with us, and they're not on staff. They have their own jobs doing their own things, but they are all in with us. Look at this next one. This is Mark. Mark is, he works for William Morris, which is a talent agency. They represent everybody in any kind of entertainment business. He works particularly in the music industry, obviously being in Nashville. Mark has any like Christian band you've ever heard of. Mark knows them and has had lunch with them. Mark is a professional schmoozer. That's his job. When I went up to meet him at his office in downtown Nashville, one of those new glass skyscrapers, amazing. I met him. He talked to people on this gigantic elevator the entire way down. He talked to random people on the street all the way to our lunch place. We got to the restaurant. He already knew half the people in that restaurant, and by the end of our lunch, he had met the other half of the people there. And so finally, when I got his attention and we were able to like talk together and catch up, he started telling me about, man, look at what's going on in the city right now. There's so much change, Brandon. I think we might need a new church. He gave my pitch to me while we were having lunch there. And so I told him, I was like, Mark, let me tell you about the Nashville Project. And so Mark and his wife, Joyce, are really excited to be on board with us. We're glad to have them. And again, they're not on staff. They're just doing this with us. So let's look at the next one. This is Sean. Sean's a single dad. He's a good guy. He grew up Christian home, Bible-believing Christian parents, brought him to church, brought him to youth group. He heard all of the same sermons I heard when we were in high school. But something happened with him when he graduated high school, and he moved away from his faith and moved away from the church, not physically, but for whatever reason, he just felt like he didn't have a place that belonged once he graduated youth group. Right? This is a story we've heard a lot. I mean, Sean's one of these guys who grew up in the Bible Belt, and yet he feels like he has, for whatever reason, he has no place to connect. And so when he went through a really messy divorce, and when he began to struggle with alcoholism, he reached out to me because he had heard that I was coming back to town. And I had dinner with him, and we were able to have a lot of really interesting conversations. And I told him, I was like, hey, man, I'm preaching at a church in town this Sunday, actually. I said, you should get your new girlfriend, who I don't think has ever been to church. And I said, you should come out and hear me. So he's coming this Sunday. This next guy is Joseph. Joseph is one of the nicest guys I have ever met. He is everyone's friend. He actually went to Milligan here with me. He was my roommate in college, but a lot happened to him while he was here. He ended up dropping out. He also went through a divorce. Really, his whole life just kind of fell apart. Not typical of Milligan students, by the way. I don't mean to say that in a negative way. No, he just moved away from his faith. I mean, it was about 12 years ago that he was done with it. I'm done with church. I'm done with Jesus. Went back to Nashville, got into the music industry, and because he's such a great guy and he's friends with everybody, he knows everybody in Nashville, everyone in the music industry, and he's done well for himself for 12 years. But he also hasn't stepped foot in a church in 12 years. So I had lunch with him 2 weeks ago. I said, hey, I'm back in town. We should catch up. He's telling me about his life. Asking me, what are you doing? I'm telling him about our church. I'm telling him about our vision. I told him the same thing. You should grab your girlfriend. Come out. I'm going to preach at this church Sunday. So him and his girlfriend are coming this Sunday also. These are the people that are in the city. These are the people that we're called to reach. And so I'm asking you guys to help me reach these people. Help me do kingdom work in this place. And there's 2 ways that you can do that. I want to give you 2 ways that you can help me. One of them is financial. If you're a church leader, and you can talk to your mission team, or you can talk to your elders, or whoever you need to talk to, but you can commit. We're looking for partners to go in with us at $50,000 over 4 years. We're looking for people to go in with us. And whether that's, if you look at it over 4 years, what is that like? Something like 12 something over each year. I probably shouldn't be doing math while I'm standing in front of people right now. But that can be either a monthly commitment or a quarterly commitment or a yearly commitment or whatever that might look like. Another way is you can commit to supporting at a different amount. Maybe you're at a church or you can't do $50,000. You can commit to giving, maybe it's $100 a month. We've been meeting with people and challenging people, just families, and say, hey, we want you to commit to giving $100 a month. We have families that are giving $100 a month for 4 years. We got some that are giving $200 a month. We have some that are giving $400. We have some that are giving $10 a month. And whatever that is, obviously all of that, it helps. And fundraising is a part of my life for the next 4 years. But here's what I tell everybody. It's I'm going to be fundraising because that's just how we do this. That's how we get this rolling. But the more we can get that out of the way, the more we can focus on people, which is what we're there to do. Another thing you can do is maybe there's a special gift that you or your church can do. Maybe like a Christmas offering or a special offering or we'll have needs that arise. Right now, thankfully, we're in that early phase, but next year, definitely, we're going to start having needs pop up where it's hey, we need to get chairs, we need to get equipment, we need to get this stuff, and we'll have that arise, and we'd love to be able to have people that we can come to and say, hey, man, is this a special gift that you guys can do this? So there's another way that you can help us, and that's personally. Maybe some of you need to move to Nashville. I spent my entire morning yesterday on Milligan's campus going from class to class saying that. And I know that's crazy, and Ethan said that here at church on Sunday. And that's a crazy thing, it is. That's what? I'm going to just quit our job and sell our house and uproot our family and move to Nashville to be a part of the church plant? Yeah, man, that is crazy. I know, because I did it. In the past few years, God has done so many crazy things in our lives that I no longer am ashamed to challenge people to do crazy things. I don't take crazy off the table anymore, man. This is the creator of the universe we're talking about here. Man, he has big plans. So maybe there's someone in here. Maybe if you're a Milligan or Emmanuel student or, maybe coming up on graduation, I guarantee you, whatever city you're thinking about moving to after graduation, it's not going to be as cool as Nashville, all right? Whatever it is, Nashville's the coolest city in the world. Maybe you know someone who needs to move. Maybe if you're a pastor, you have a Milligan student or Emmanuel student in your church. Man, grab them and send them to Nashville. Tell them they need to go with us. And I don't mean to be on staff with us or be our youth pastor. Those things would be good too. But we need nurses, we need teachers, we need business women. We need people in our city, living in our city and building relationships and being a part of our team and being a part of our neighborhoods and things like that. So maybe you know someone, maybe you know a friend or someone that you can challenge and be hey, maybe you should talk to this guy. Here's his card, that sort of thing. Another way is, I forgot it. Yeah, it's on the screen. Yeah. Maybe you know someone in Nashville. That's what's been interesting about the past few days here in Johnson City. Is I've run into so many people who have friends in Nashville, family in Nashville. Is like, oh man, my sister, and she hasn't been to church in forever, and or my friend just moved there from college, or is going to Vanderbilt there, or whatever it might be. If you know someone in Nashville, then you need to get in touch with them. You need to get me in touch with them. Let me have their info. Like maybe you need to say, hey man, there's a thing happening in the city, and this is awesome, and you need to be a part of that. I think that's something that like, in some way, like we can all do something to help this out. I have signups right there, and I'd love to get your email. We want to be sharing our newsletter to say, like, here's what's happening right now. We want to get as many people as possible covering this in prayer and praying specifically with what specifically is happening. I would love to hang out afterwards today and talk with anyone about any of these things. I know, like, I didn't get a chance to cover everything. There's so much more to say. I could stand here all day, but I don't think Ethan wants me to do that. But I'd love to hang out here and talk with you guys and see where God takes that. So thanks. That's all I got for today.